Hello and welcome to Warhammer 40,000 Rogue Trader. I'm Shadowcoast and welcome to the channel. We're taking a look at Abelard in this early access alpha version. So just as a reminder, the early access or alpha version starts in Act 2, so all our characters actually start at level 15. So we're reviewing Abelard as he is in this early access vision. We'll review his characteristics, stats, weapons, progression, and biography. I am taking this from the very beginning of the alpha start in Act 2 because I want to limit as many surprises. So we're really focusing on Abelard. Now, to begin with, let's take a look at his character sheet and look at his weapons. He starts off with a Power Maul, which is a pretty good one-handed melee weapon. We can still equip a last gun or another weapon here, so we're going to want to do that once we obtain it. So you can see the stats on the Power Maul. And then he also has a Melta-Gun. Now, Melta-Guns, I would argue, will hypothetically will be hard to come by. He does need to have the ability to use it, I believe, or maybe anyone can use Melta-Gun. I'm not seeing a special ability like the bolter weapons. Let me see, does this say? It doesn't say anything, it just says basic Melta-Gun. So 14 and 19 damage, 8 penetration, this is pretty awesome. A nice AoE effect, especially good at taking down servitors or other enemies that have heavy armor with that penetration. So those are his starting weapons. Let's take a look at some of his skills. When you can see this here, he's pretty good at, call it more melee type aspects, so he has pretty good athletics. He's good at carousing or toughness. I think he has the highest toughness of the group. Looking through things, that'll be very important because that toughness is going to check against a lot of different things like poison clouds and other items throughout the game. So we will be taking him in many cases running through the most dangerous areas. He does have Medicae, so if we look at his items later on here, let me see if I can switch to that. You can see he can use medikits and other items, so this will be important so he can heal himself throughout the journeys. So those are his skills. You can see he's lower on persuasion, demolition, and some of these other things. He does have a decent experience in lore. His highest is in commerce base stat fellowship, so that'll be interesting. And he has decent coercion. Maybe not as good as some of our other characters. That's our character in our build here that I'm using as an example. We're a commissar in this particular build. I have a few going, so we're going to have higher coercion as a commissar. So those are his, call it, skills. Let's take a look at his stats. He has pretty good weapon skills. That means he's more of a melee character, although he does have a Melta-Gun, which we will be using a lot. He has good strength. Again, that kind of plays into his melee component, and toughness that we talked about. And this is carouse, which is based off toughness. I should have clarified that. These are two different things. Carousal is the skill that allows to resist the negative effects on substances, so when running through those toxic clouds from that perspective. And toughness, they can resist toxin poison, so they're basically linked. Although carousing, I believe, has other abilities to it, so this might just not have been built out fully yet. You can see lower agility, lower intelligence, decent perception, lower willpower, and lower fellowship. So let's take a look at his abilities and progressions, but before we do that, let's take the fight to the enemy. This is at the beginning. I just kind of switched to his turn. We're going to focus on melee. The Melta-Gun is nice because we can get that nice AoE effect. But at the end of the day, when we look at Abelard, he is a melee character. At least that's how they built it. So we're going to run, hit this guy. We're going to do a forceful strike. And hit this guy. And then we're going to... let me see. We're going to taunt. Who's going next? This guy. So we're going to taunt you. And then we're going to... Oh, snap. We're out of endure. We should have endured. I screwed that up. But there we go. We took this guy down. In retrospect, we probably should have used a Melta-Gun. which we might be using more often than not until we get into close range, and then have him pull out his melee weapons as single target DPS down enemies. Now, let's go back to his character sheet and look at his progression. For his Tier 1 career, he is a fighter. Fighters, let's see, there's in the description, but trust me when I say fighters are focused on fighting with a focus on melee skills. So we use charge. The fighter moves in a straight line and strikes a target that interrupts the fighter's path with a basic melee attack. This attack does not count towards the limit of the fighter's attacks per turn. FDT, Disarm, Forceful Strike, also decreases WS and BS of an enemy by 5 plus fighter strength bonus. So this is particularly good on stronger enemy melee attackers. We can use that Forceful Strike like we did to basically debuff them and basically debuff them. Alright, SAA is a placeholder, or it might just not be filled out yet. We have Taunting Scream, which we use after killing an enemy or dealing Righteous Fury with a melee attack. The fighter screams at their enemies to become the priority target for those who fails a willpower test. So this is basically your basic taunt if you're a tank. Superior Vigilance SVF. For 1 turn, all incoming damage reduces the fighter's reduces by the fighter's toughness bonus. The fighter also strikes back when receiving attacks and guards, allies in a radius of 3, jumping in and striking enemies with preemptive strike, making enemy attacks 50% easier to dodge. So this is pretty awesome. I believe this is a passive. Yeah, that's a passive trait that he Superior Vigilance. What were we looking at? Was that Superior Vigilance? I think it was. Yes, so this is actually a heroic. I misspoke. A heroic act. So as we build momentum, we unlock different heroic acts, like Last Stand, and then up here, Superior Vigilance, which is very helpful in playing the tank role and defending our team. That's why it's in a star there. FM, Menacing Presence, increases difficulty of willpower tests against Taunting Scream. So we're basically buffing our taunt. WS, it looks like that's a placeholder for now. Brotherly Shoulder Endure grants +3 absorption for all allies, for each ally in the near the fighter. So this is what I wanted to do, but I wasn't paying attention to my action points. Endure until the fighter's next turn, all incoming attacks deal less damage as if the fighter's deflection were fighter's toughness bonus divided by 2. So that is really helpful. That is kind of weird that we're getting buffs to endure even though it's down here, but that's good to know. CSA, I believe that's a placeholder. TAA placeholder. We are early access. Forceful Strike. The fighter's next melee attack has a greater chance to knock down an enemy. Chance is increased by 3 times the fighter's WS bonus. So this is really helpful. So when I'm using these acronyms, oh, you know what this is? These might not be placeholders, but when we click on this, I think it increases our skills. So WS will increase our weapon skills. You can see here. CSA, I'm not sure what CSA is. I don't see it here. So maybe I'm being blind, or there's another stat, or it is truly a placeholder. But when I'm quoting these different things, like WS is the weapon skill over here, just to clarify. Let's keep going. Advanced. Increase movement points by the fighter by 4. This is huge because he is melee. Abelard has some of the best movement of our squad because of things like advance. PAA, I believe this is a placeholder. Then Endure. This is one of the best moves. We're going to pop this often because Abelard's going to be out front leading the way in most cases. And then FIB, first into battle. Whenever the fighter charges an enemy, they regain 5 momentum plus 2 momentum per each enemy adjacent to the fighter at the end of the charge. If the number of enemies adjacent to the fighter is 3 or more, the next endure ability will cost no momentum. So that's also important to note. Apparently, we look at this, it says 1 AP. I don't think it's linked to momentum. So those are an overview of his skills. When we look at features, we also have Medicaid training. So this allows him to use medikits, which is really important. So these will reduce their wounds, trauma, heal from that perspective. Then we also have, I believe, Last Stand, which is independent. For 1 round, the fighter stays on their feet even if the wounds reach 0. The fighter also strikes back when receiving attacks and guards allies in a radius of 3, jumping in and striking enemies with a preemptive strike. So Last Stand we can use, it's a less good version of Superior Vigilance. And I'm kind of curious now, as I look at this, I wonder if there's like something in here before this technically that's giving us Last Stand, or that's just a unique ability trait that we get when we pick fighter, which might be the case. Reputations across the board for us. Biography. Abelard, we're Syrian. Seneschal, Abelard, we're Syrian, is one of the closest associates of the late Theodore von Valentius. He has spent a decade serving the Rogue Trader's trade empire, and he clearly intends to spend another decade keeping a close eye on every negligent servant or undertrained officer. The elderly Seneschal does not show it, but the death of Theodore, whom he faithfully served for many years, shocked him. Abelard is willing to do anything to ensure that Theodore's successor becomes a brilliant rogue trader worthy of his predecessor. But what could such fanatical zeal lead to? So he is on our side for now, but our actions could lead him to not like us. So with that in mind, we are going to go ahead and call this an episode. We just wanted to do a deeper dive into Abelard. He is one of my favorite characters. I will say my all-time favorite of my playthroughs so far has been Argenta. She's the one that does the most damage, although Abelard is pretty good with his multi-gun, and soon after this you're going to get better melee weapons, which will really augment Abelard's melee ability, although I will say the multi-gun is one of the most useful tools we have on hand, although it does cost more to use. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you in future videos. If you did find this helpful, please drop a thumbs up. And be sure to follow some of the playthrough. There will be spoilers. I do have a criminal playthrough I'm posting, taking on a more criminal-esque background, calling it the Pirate Lord Rogue Trader. So check that out, although there will be spoilers. So if you want to wait and not be spoiled, please be sure to skip that and check back in on some of these other character deep dives. Thanks for watching. Shadow Coast out.